Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of Rich T Racing. Now in this edition we are going to be doing a track guide for the Whilton Mill International Layout. This is the circuit for which we are going to this weekend for Club 100 in December. We will be going to the Zulu layout, the national layout, and I'll do another track guide for that track around that time. But for now we're going to focus on the international layout. What you're going to see here is a dry lap followed by a step-by-step guide through that lap, showing you the things that I do well, showing you the things that I do wrong, and hopefully you'll be able to learn a thing or two. Should point out, it is not a very good lap, and you will hopefully be able to learn a lot of things about what not to do around this track. Afterwards, we're then going to have a look at a wet lap, and then after I've done that wet lap, I'm going to show you a little battle between myself and one of the guys that will hopefully one day be racing with Rich T Racing in Club 100. In some way, shape or form. And with all that said and done, let us now have a look at a dry lap of the Whilton Mill International Circuit. Right, let's have a look at this lap in more detail then, shall we? Now, the first thing to point out is, just before we even start the lap, is this curb here. It is no longer flat like you see it here. It's more of a tower block curb. It was obscene. I think it's calmed down recently. I think they had it reprofiled again. But yeah, you can't ride this curb in the same way as you see me doing here. So just worth bearing that in mind. But yeah, as we get this lap started, obviously you're going to be onto the left-hand side of the track. You want to get yourself over onto the right-hand side for turn one, because obviously that is a left hand as well, and your turn-in point is just beyond the, if I just bring it back just a little bit, it's just beyond the marshal post. And what you want to do, you want to get yourself as far over onto the left as possible, because the next corner, the right-hander, can also be done completely flat out. So if you just see here, you get, again, this is an example of how far over to the left I am. I'm basically onto the grass there. But yeah, so as far over to the left as possible. If you are new, I'd recommend lifting around here so that you can then get yourself sorted and then get yourself back on the power as quickly as possible through turn two and down the straight towards Christmas. But yeah, just worth bearing that in mind. This is a good point to lift off if you're not comfortable or if your cart is unsettled. So yeah, as far over to the left as possible. Your apex for turn two is not here. I've apexed a little bit too early at these tyres here. It's actually more at this drain right here. So it's a bit of a later apex, but this means you are going to be able to take this corner pretty much flat out. The good thing about this corner is that you've got a lot of runoff, so you can, so again, taking this flat is relatively easy if you're in good shape. If you've come out as wide as possible, and if you've then just kept it pinned, you've got all this runoff to use. But yeah, you keep it going, obviously down the straight, cut that corner, now into Christmas. Now your braking point is about here-ish. You're looking for the marshal post, so a little bit later than how I've braked here. You can brake really late for this corner because it is uphill, and it also has something called positive camber, whatever that means. But yeah, take your apex just at the curbs and then back on the throttle as early as you can, run it out wide, flat through Boxing Day, flat through Pullman's. Make sure to cut this corner so that you're using the track as efficiently as possible, because that is effectively what a lap time is. It's the most efficient use of a racetrack. And now you're coming into what I believe is one of the worst corners in UK karting. It is Ashby. It's lock-up city, it's understeer city. I'm pretty sure there are now some really irritating curbs on the runoff area, and if there are, I haven't been to Whilton for a very long time. If they are still there, then it's just horrific. But basically, to do this corner correctly, you want to be looking for these 3 lines in the track. Now, if you are new to all this, you want to use this first line as your reference point, and as you build up in confidence, go for the second line. And then once you sort of know what you're doing, you want to really be braking probably just beyond the third of the 3 lines. Now, as I mentioned at the start, this is not the best lap in the world, and this is where you begin to see it, because I turn in so ridiculously early. I'm turning in here, and if you follow my cursor around, you can see where where the tarmac changes, when you can basically see where the tyres would normally be, and I'm already so far to the left, and that's why this lap just isn't fantastic. So it's a much later turn in for Ashby than you might think. Get it flicked in and get back on the power as soon as possible. Use this runoff if you are able to. Obviously if the curbs are there, you won't be able to at all. And you'll have to get on the power much later. Run your wheels over the plastic stuff there to cut the time, and then we come into the first of the reverse Lesmos. That's 100% not their name, but it's what I've been calling them for years. What you want to do with this corner is when you brake, you then want to get off the brakes as soon as possible. Maybe do a bit of trail braking as well, where basically you're on the brake and feathering the throttle as well. Basically, this is a really fast corner, and it's got a lot more runoff than you might think. So you're going to see again here, I take too much curb, and then I'm way too far over to the left. I mean, look at where my cursor is now. Between this curb and the white line, then all of this stuff here, you've got so much runoff area to use. And it's just, you really want your right tyres between this curb and the white line. So that's why you brake just momentarily, get off the brakes as soon as possible, and just get your foot planted as best as you possibly can. Obviously, avoid these tyres, but yeah, it's really important to get on the throttle as early as possible. That will give you a good entry into the second of the reverse Lesmos. Again, using the marshal post as your braking point. It's a much later apex on this corner than you might think. Obviously, looking at it here, you might think, oh, okay, here's my apex there. Oh, no, hang on. It goes on for absolutely ages, and you are basically apexing at the middle of this curb, if not sort of the final 3/4 of it. And yeah, this is a tricky corner, but you want to, again, late turn in, late apex, and you want to get back on the throttle as early as possible. Run your right tyres over that curb, and now you're coming into a final straight into the boot. Once again, using the marshal post as your braking point. You've also got some lines in the track here that you can use as well. And what you want to do here is hit the curb and stay on the left of the distinct black line in the middle of the track. And as you see here, that is 100% not what I do. I miss the curb, and then I'm basically in the middle of the black line. So yeah, what you can do there, you can use the brakes to get the rear end in and over that curb, and then the reason you want to be on the left-hand side of that line is so that you can then get a really good launch into the second part of the boot. You want to keep it nice and tight through here, but it's all full throttle from this point onwards, so it's nice and tight on the first apex. Keep it tight for the second apex. I do that, to be fair, I do that quite well. And then finally into the final corner, it is completely flat. Obviously, you're not riding the curb as I do here, but again, still really easy in flat. Get your wheels onto this curb. It is worth noting that in Club 100, you are allowed to use this curb. If you go across the curb, all 4 wheels not on this rumble strip, then it is a track limits warning, and if you do it again, it is a track limits penalty. So yeah, use as much of that rumble strip as you possibly can, and then it's a simple double shaka across the line, and that's a lap of Whilton Mill. It's a 55.1. It's not a very good lap at all, as I mentioned, but hopefully there you'll see some of the flaws I've pointed out, and hopefully you'll be able to see what not to do. So that is a dry lap, and what I'm going to do now is we're now going to go into the wet lap. And as I mentioned at the start, I'm not then going to go into detail on the wet lap. What instead I'm going to show you is a fight between myself and a good friend of mine, and we'll see how kart positioning and differing lines, differing throttle applications can really work in a battle in the wet. But before we get into that, of course, let's have a look at this wet lap. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that lap. I hope you were paying attention to sort of what the differing lines between the dry and the wet were. But now we're going to have a look at this little battle between myself and my good friend Adrian Porter of Swansea University Motorsport fame. And hopefully one day he will do a bit of racing for Rich T, if that is ever able to happen. But I really want you to pay attention to where each of us are placing our carts through the corners. So coming through the final corner, you'll notice we're both taking a nice wide exit, and he's got a better exit than me there, looking over his shoulder, which I do not condone. Now, this is the first mistake he makes. You can see he is going to the outside of turn 1. Now, in Formula One, what you'll hear them talking about in the wet is they talk about the karting line, and that is basically doing the opposite in the wet of what you would do in the dry. And in some instances, it works. Turn 1 is not one of those corners at Whilton Mill, because what you really want to do, as you're about to see here, is stick more to the inside. And whilst I do sort of run out a bit wide here, I want to be much further over onto the left here. What it's meant is that I'm able to pick up the throttle a lot earlier. You'll see, and you're going to see evidence of that right now. Adrian does come over to the left more, but the way he's gone into that corner, he's gone in much wider, and he's ended up on the wet stuff at the apex of turn 2, and that sort of spewed him out a bit. I've avoided that entirely and been able to pick up the throttle a lot quicker, a lot easier, and as you're going to see here, visually, I'm already beginning to gain on him down the straight. And then now this line into Christmas. Christmas is a weird corner in the wet because a lot of the wet stuff accumulates on the racing line. That's why this is where you will take a lot of differing lines through the wet. Now what I like to do is I like to come over onto the right where it just tends to be drier. I use this second pylon as my braking point, and then you sort of follow the line through the corner where you can see the dry stuff beginning to form. You sort of come to the right and then eventually work your way over to the left. Now, as you see here, I take a nice wide exit of Christmas, and then through boxing there, I'm just able to pin it very nicely and just see if you. This is where we are through after just one corner, and that's where we were just a few corners ago. So you can just see that's where better lines, better entries and exits in the wet shows just how much it works out. So again, yeah, coming to the extreme wide for Christmas, then getting it back over onto the right through Boxing Day, nicely pinning it through there. He takes a wide entry into Pullman's, which doesn't exactly work for him, as I'm already right on his arse into Ashby. You can just see there how he's getting on the throttle a lot earlier than I am, and whilst it's obviously he then gets away from me, but then he's out of control. He's spinning his tyres, and I'm just taking a nice and smoothly through that corner, braking early, getting on the throttle later, and you can just see how much more controlled I am than him on the exit. And now we come into the corner that signals his demise, the first of the reverse Lesmos. I absolutely love this corner in the wet. Basically, what you're going to see Adrian do here, he's going to take the dry line. I'm going to take the karting line, the wet line. I'm going to go to the extreme outside. He goes to the inside, and you're just really going to see what happens next. So there you go. Just look at how much quicker I'm able to get onto the throttle, and the move is done into the second of the reverse Lesmos. Now, into the second of the reverse Lesmos, what you want to be doing is sort of taking the middle line. You'll be tempted to go onto the outside, the karting line, but as you can see there's a load of crap out there from the grass, from the mud, and that will cause you to spin. So you really got to look out for that. That's why the middle line really works, because you can still get on the throttle quite easily. It's then sort of a dry exit. Okay, I don't take the curb there, but now coming into the boot, obviously you are braking a lot earlier, and again, much like on the dry lap, I've completely missed the curb, which is something you don't want to do. You want to be on that curb because it gives you an awful lot of grip, and then you want to be on properly on the left of this line, almost coming into the pits, because that's where the grip is. That's where you are then able to get a really good entry into the second part of the boot, and that is not what I've done here. So I get myself back over there, and then I'm able to get the throttle pin, but you can see there, Adrian now going down the inside into the final corner. He's got the move pretty much done, but the problem is for him is that it is more wet here than it is on the inside than it is on the outside. I've got the more optimal line in terms of throttle application and delivery. So what you're going to see here is he's going to slide out, force me out, and now I'm still in front. It's still really close now, heading into the first corner, and you can hear they're braking just underneath the gantry post. Get myself all the way onto the left, much better than previously, although I do then get spewed out a little bit. This is where it's crucial. Adrian on the extreme inside of turn 2, I'm on the outside, and just watch how I'm able to get, I'm not sliding, I'm not out of control, I'm able to get the throttle done. Adrian, meanwhile, he was sliding about, he bumped into me, and that basically meant he could not get the throttle down as quickly as he could, and I get the place. And all that happened, that final little move there, because I was on the outside of turn 2 even, and he was on the inside sliding about. So that is what I hope is a very comprehensive guide to the Whilton Mill International layout in both the dry and the wet. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learnt a thing or two from this. I'm sorry if I've rambled on a little bit too much, but if you are still watching and you have enjoyed this, have learnt something from this, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, like and comment as well. That is all from me. Look forward to seeing some of you hopefully at Whilton Mill this weekend. And the final thing I shall say for now is ta-ta and farewell.